Registration error. New Jersey's governor says during the previous administration, a software error led to around 6,600 non-U.S. citizens getting added to the voter rolls.
Let me be clear. This entire situation is unacceptable.
Ahead, the possible political and legal fallout from the revelation and what the neighboring state of Pennsylvania is doing as a result of the error. Then later, keeping Philadelphia on the world stage after a summer of big events. How local leaders are looking to extend the impact.
NBC10 At Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 At Issue. This past week, New Jersey Governor Mayk revealed a software error in her state led to 6,600 people who are not U.S. citizens being registered to vote. Governor Sherrill says the people were registered as Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters. She said fewer than 400 actually voted in the state, but some did. Sherrill says the errors happened between June of 2023 and June of 2024, while Governor Phil Murphy was in office.
This failure didn't occur under my watch, but accountability starts now. Because the people of New Jersey shouldn't have to wait a year for a problem to get solved, or 2 years to learn it even happened.
Governor Sherrill says the state is working to remove the people from the voter rolls. She says an independent firm has been hired to investigate and that her administration is working to make sure this doesn't happen again. New Jersey officials on Tuesday said they are transitioning from IDEMIA to a different vendor. Now, IDEMIA, in a statement on Tuesday, said voter registration information is transmitted to the New Jersey Department of State Division of Elections, which is ultimately responsible for verifying eligibility to vote. Joining us now to discuss this is Mayk. He's director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you, Lauren.
So I want to talk about what this means in New Jersey and also nationally. First of all, in New Jersey, you have got a governor. You've got a problem that happened during the previous administration, a Democratic administration. You've got Republican lawmakers saying they want a special committee to look into this. How much of a mess is this for New Jersey?
Well, it is a huge mess, even though we're only talking about an exposure of maybe 400 votes, which is a minuscule number. There is a zero tolerance. There is a lot of political controversy. As you know, both sides making hay over this. It's a mess, even for the governor, who it did not occur on her watch. It is now very much on her watch to fix this and to fix it quickly before we have any other elections coming up that could be called into question by these errors. So this, even though she didn't start it, this is now her mess to deal with.
Do you expect that we may hear from candidates wanting to know where people may have voted and could it have affected some, local races that sometimes are decided by dozens of votes?
Absolutely. There are a couple of races that occurred for local office in New Jersey since the June 2023 date when this glitch started that were decided by 1 vote or 2 votes. And so candidates are very clearly going to be lamenting that and looking at that and saying, were any of those votes took place, did any of those votes take place in my town? And so I think those kinds of questions are going to be asked. I don't know if anyone will sue and try to get a judge to overturn an election. I really don't know the answer to that. But there is clearly the potential that some races could have been impacted by a very small number of votes. Very important to note, if we're talking about less than 400 votes, and if these were distributed all over the state, then there aren't going to be more than a couple in one town or one jurisdiction or one election. But we just don't know that until
we don't know. We don't know if there were clusters or not. We just don't know.
We don't know. And there are calls to get that kind of a distribution, not the personal information. Of course, some people are looking for that, but where were these votes?
Yeah, there is also a legal fight brewing on this, with the Department of Justice saying that they want the state to turn over information on these voters for their investigation. And when I was at the news conference with Governor Sherrill in Trenton, the idea of whether these individuals could be charged came up. I want people to listen to an exchange that I had with her. Take a listen to this.
We're working very hard on ways in which we can protect people here in the state of New Jersey.
In terms of protecting them, does that mean that you won't release their information to the feds or anyone else if it's requested?
We are not in the practice of releasing personally identifying information to the federal government right now, given that the Trump administration continues to weaponize it against people.
So she was pretty clear there about not wanting to turn that information over to the federal government. Would the federal government have other avenues, other options, courts, some other way to get that information if she and the Department of State are not going to say, hey, here it is?
Sure. There was an immigration law passed in 1996 that put responsibility on immigrants for certain behaviors, and it did outlaw voting in federal elections. And so that is a criminal offense federally, and presumably if the federal government wanted to investigate those charges or bring those charges, then they would have the ability to compel testimony, to subpoena information. We'll see if it gets to that level. I do understand the idea that 6,600 people did nothing wrong. They did check the box no, that they were not a citizen. That's different than the 400 people, or as many as 400 people, who got the voter registration card and cast ballots anyway. 6,200 people did not do that. They knew that they were not eligible to vote. 400 people did. And I think that's really ultimately what we're going to drill down on.
And then this is coming at a time when voting is in the national spotlight as well. And we have seen President Trump pushing for the Save America Act, which has not had enough votes to get through the Senate. Does this change the calculations, you think, at all in Washington in terms of just those numbers for that particular act or for another option that lawmakers could come up with?
It probably doesn't change. It certainly President Trump is holding this up as an Exhibit A right now for the Save America Act. You're absolutely right about that. It probably doesn't change the dynamics of whether or not this bill can overcome a filibuster. We are running out of time. We're about to get to the summer break. This probably doesn't change that dynamic.
All right. A lot to follow here. Mayk Rasmussen from Rider University. Thanks so much. Great to see you.
Thank you, Lauren.
And that incident in New Jersey prompted Pennsylvania to take some action. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation does use the same vendor, IDEMIA, that New Jersey uses. PennDOT uses it for driver's license and ID card services. On Wednesday, PennDOT told me because of the issue in New Jersey, they ran a check of their system and that it confirmed that everything is, quote, functioning as designed. So here's what PennDOT tells me the process is in Pennsylvania. When someone comes into a driver's license center to apply for a license or an ID, they have to show documentation that they are lawfully allowed to be in the U.S. If they are lawfully present but not a citizen, there is something added to their record that prevents them from being given the option to register to vote. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now, additionally, each person who does get the option to register to vote is asked multiple times if they are a citizen. If they say no, the registration process is supposed to end. PennDOT says they tested this system on Wednesday and that the system worked. We've gotten some questions this week about Pennsylvania's process and specifically proof of citizenship. Well, back in May, on an episode of my Battleground Politics podcast, I spoke to Pennsylvania's Secretary of State, Al Schmidt, about the way Pennsylvania voter registration works, and I asked him about that. On Pennsylvania's voter registration form, it asks you to check a box to say whether you're a citizen, and if you check no, it says you can't register to vote, and then it has a section where you're asked to declare and sign that you are a citizen, you've been one for 30 days before the election. It does not ask for documentation. Why not? Why not ask for verification? That is an issue that has gotten so much attention.
Well, as you know, cases of non-citizens voting, and you know I've worked on this issue for many years, for now since 2012, 2013. It's been some time. So it's an issue I am acutely aware of, and can say with great conviction and without hesitation that it happens very infrequently. That being said, and through the motor voter system, voters are put on one path if you're a citizen, which allows you the opportunity to register to vote, or another path if you're not a citizen that does not provide the opportunity to register to vote. And there was just an audit from our Auditor General in Pennsylvania that in the hundreds of thousands of records that they audited, there was one case, it was caught in real time, and that non-citizen did not vote through that whole process. So there are safeguards in place at every step of the way, and you are, in fact, swearing and affirming under penalty of prosecution and obviously deportation that you're a citizen of the United States.
Is there a reason that you do it that way with the affirmation as opposed to saying you have to show a document?
Yeah, the law requires the affirmation, and it's important so that if a non-citizen would register to vote and vote, they would be held accountable for doing so. For us, working closely with the counties, this is not an issue that we've seen occurring with any great frequency whatsoever, but it is something that we take seriously.
That was Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt back in May. Now, when I talked to PennDOT this week, they also pointed out there is a difference between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Pennsylvania only issues driver's licenses to individuals with lawful status, while New Jersey does issue them regardless of immigration status. Now, staying on the topic of voting, we're going to talk to the chair of Philadelphia City Commissioners. They are in charge of running elections in the city of Philadelphia. Chairman Omar Sabir is here in studio. We are going to talk about keeping elections safe, secure, and accessible. Good to see you, Chairman.
Good to see you.
All right, we'll be right back.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
Welcome back to NBC10 At Issue. I'm Lauren Mayk. Before the break, we discussed the revelation that more than 6,000 non-citizens were mistakenly added to the voter rolls in New Jersey. And now we're going to stick with the topic of elections and election security as we welcome in studio Commissioner Omar Sabir. He is a Democrat and the chair of the Philadelphia City Commissioners. They oversee elections in the city. Welcome back to NBC10 At Issue.
Glad to be back.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Philadelphia right now, but I want to start with this issue that happened in New Jersey, and I know Pennsylvania has also responded to it and run a test. Pennsylvania does use the same vendor IDEMIA that New Jersey does. Have you run into any issues like this in Philadelphia, and what's your level of concern that this raises?
Oh, well, it's very concerning. Of course, with people that have the misinformation and disinformation out there, it's to be clear that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is completely different from New Jersey. In the words of Kendrick Lamar, they're not like us. I mean, we have different security systems than what they have over in New Jersey.
Have you gotten any, I know that there is often communication between the Department of State and counties throughout Pennsylvania and elections officials about how things are running or sharing information. Have you gotten any information from Harrisburg, from the Department of State about this, any instructions since this happened?
No, not recently, but again, I have full and complete faith in Al Schmidt. I mean, he was a former colleague, former city commissioner, and we have Governor Shapiro. I mean, we take election security seriously, and rest assured, the citizens of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, you will get the election that you deserve. Our elections are safe, simple, and secure as they have always been.
And you mentioned misinformation and disinformation. When something like this happens, that is a serious issue that is now being investigated, and we know some of these individuals did vote in New Jersey. What does that do to people's trust in the system, whether that be in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia?
Sure. Well, it's just where we consume our information now. People consume their information from social media, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, that's their first source. And I was growing up, I used to like to watch, NBC10 and all these different news outlets, but unfortunately, people take what's on social media as the truth. And we're to tell you to go to a reliable source with reliable information. And that is your local county officials, the Secretary of State. They have the accurate information in regards to what you're voting, because people are trying to get people to stop voting. That's the whole overall goal with all the misinformation, disinformation, is to get people to stop voting and lose faith in the process.
You are at a point right now where you are launching something this summer, and you are looking to get more people engaged in the process
That's
and
right.
get more people voting and to raise voter turnout. Does this make it more difficult for you?
Actually, it doesn't. I mean, for me personally, I mean, I like to have conversations about civics all year long. So, you know, if it's breaking down misinformation, disinformation is what it is. I mean, I think the people in Jersey, again, it was a mistake. I think it was honest. They were transparent about it. And now it's just time to move on. And what's moving on right now is Tuesday, November the 3rd, which is the most critical election in our lifetime. And if Philadelphia sits at home, we will lose resources. We're going to lose accountability. And no one needs to sit at home. I want every eligible voter to come on out and vote.
This year in the midterms, there are a lot of races that are going to get a lot of attention.
Yes.
Pennsylvania has some of the really competitive races. But for Philadelphians who may look at that and say, I don't live in the Lehigh Valley, I don't live in Bucks County, these places that are going to see a lot of attention and a lot of money for these really competitive races, how do you convince people that they need to turn out in Philadelphia as well?
What I always tell people is this, look, if you're happy with everything that's going on, gas at record prices, affordability going through the roof, if you like, receiving bills down for your student loans, I mean, whatever the issue is, right? If you're happy with that and the direction our country is going, sit at home, don't say anything. But I like to say, hey, I think we always can make our country better. And I think when you come out and vote, again, you're not voting just for candidates or a partisan issue. You're voting for your neighborhood. You're telling policymakers that I'm here, I exist, and I will not be ignored.
We talked a little bit earlier in the show also about the president has been talking about the Save America Act and pushing for that, which would require voter ID and proof of citizenship. And how are you and your colleagues looking at that and preparing for the possibility that there could be some sort of changes in election administration? Well,
again, it's always in phases, always in waves. And we saw this all from the previous elections when there ever was a frivolous lawsuit being filed. People, they hear those lawsuits they hear them being reported on, and they think that those lawsuits are actually changes. So some people now think that you have to bring a birth certificate or a passport to come vote in November. And so again, it's up to us to keep on doing the same thing. Summer block series, working with community groups, going to faith-based organizations, meeting the people where we are, and you covering it. I mean, as the media constantly keep on covering it, making it a big deal. When I talk to a lot of our younger residents, they say, these other elections, nobody really care about them. No one talks about them. So we're calling on all Philadelphia, our media partners, our community leaders. Everyone needs to take every election very seriously. Every 6 months, there's an election. We need the same hoopla around every election, the same exact way we do with the presidential elections.
And you're going to be visiting all around the city to try to get the word out, get people engaged.
That's right.
That starts. It's starting now, and it goes through the end of the summer?
That's right. That's right. So we're going to be at 10. We have 10 satellite election offices, one in each councilmatic district. So they're beautiful places, and you'll be able to come there pretty soon to request your ballot, print out your ballot. You're able to get registered all at the same time. And you'll be able to cast your ballot before November the 3rd. So that's what I'm very excited about. But unfortunately, a lot of people still don't know exactly what those satellite offices does. So this summer block series is so great, and I'm so grateful that we have a great team that sort of pushed the envelope for us to do this summer block series.
Commissioner Omar Sabir, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Well, Philadelphia welcomed the world this summer for the World Cup and other big events. Ahead, how local leaders are hoping to use that success to keep the spotlight on Philly in the future.
This is NBC10 At Issue.
The FIFA World Cup games in the U.S. this summer not only built excitement for soccer, it put host cities like Philadelphia on the world stage. Now there's an effort to capitalize on that.
The FIFA World Cup brought people, excitement, and attention to Philadelphia. Now the city's looking at what the lasting impact could be.
Just maybe for a moment, Philadelphia, we saw ourselves the same way the world saw us. They came to experience our history, but they left believing in our future, and that's what happens when our city believes in itself.
Mayor Sherelle Parker this past week talking to a room full of local, state, and global leaders at a U.S. Global Leadership Coalition event, pointing to the potential for economic growth. The mayor saying when people experience Philadelphia, they begin to invest here.
And if you need proof, I want you to think about Bondwell. I want you to think about Hanwha. I want you to think about Rhodes Industries. I want you to think about Terra Power, different industries, different countries, one decision, Philadelphia.
It's also now up to local leaders to decide how to use the spotlight on the city while the experience is fresh. This year's World Cup already leading to new opportunity in Boston. The World Cup experience hosting Scotland led to plans for a new partnership with Glasgow.
Do you think there are specific opportunities with the countries who played here in Philadelphia that could be developed?
Well, one of the great things about the World Cup was the relationships that fans from abroad developed for one in particular city where their team happened to be hosted. So I look forward to attempting to expand the number of sister cities we have.
Congressman Brendan Boyle says Philadelphia should start planning to host future events after proving in a string of events in 2026 that it can pull it off. He has a suggestion.
It does seem as if the United States has a great chance to host the next available World Cup in 2038. We need to start planning right now to make sure Philadelphia is absolutely a part of the next U.S. hosted World Cup. Why can't we host the championship game?
This is NBC10 At Issue.
We're back now with a quick reminder. For more of my interviews with lawmakers, government officials, candidates, and other newsmakers, be sure to subscribe to my Battleground Politics podcast. New episodes are posted to NBC10.com, the NBC10 app, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube channel, or you can stream episodes wherever you get your podcasts. That does it for this edition of NBC10 At Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.